Today's episode of She Brew in the City is brought to you by Top Dog Tours. Whether you're visiting Toronto, Boston, Philadelphia, or New York City, we've got something for everybody. Visit us at topdogtours.com to book your tour today and follow us on social media for any special offers and discounts. So I hope you enjoyed that first half of Josh's interview and love him just as much as I do. As I mentioned, we had so much to talk about that we have a two-parter. So this next episode is going to be the second part of Josh's interview. As I mentioned before, Josh is currently in previews for the new musical Death Becomes Her, which I saw on its first preview night. It was excellent. You can check that out online. Also, be sure to follow Josh on Instagram. You can take a look at some of the old production photos and get to know him a little bit better as well. So please enjoy Josh's episode, part 2. So you've mentioned a few of them. Do you have any kind of crazy things that have happened on stage? I think all actors have, they like, this happened and it was nuts, or something maybe you've seen happen in a show that you were watching.
I would say the craziest thing that happened to me wasn't on Broadway. I was in a children's theater production of Big River when I was a kid, and I played Tom Sawyer. And it was one of those children's theaters that had 1 million kids, so I wasn't the only Tom Sawyer. As a matter of fact, Adam Lambert was the other Tom Sawyer.
Yeah, who's also a Jew.
Who's also a Jew. I grew up with him. We sang in a temple choir together for a moment.
I love you're like, for a second. I can only imagine what Adam Lambert singing in a temple choir would sound like.
Well, what's funny is when he was young, his voice wasn't that good. And then when he was a high schooler, all of a sudden he had the best voice in the world, and I was so jealous I could scream. But at the time when we were like 13, he was the other Tom Sawyer. The character Tom Sawyer sings a song called How About a Hand for the Hog? Mm-hmm. And it's very quick, very rapid. And for whatever reason, they had us holding a real pig as we sang the song. So I think it was my only performance as Tom Sawyer. I was not the favored child here. Was a matinee, and I'm holding a pig.
Like a baby pig?
A pig. I was 13-ish, 14-ish, who knows. Yeah, it wasn't like a huge pig or anything, but it was a pig, a holdable pig. And halfway through the song, the pig shit in my hands. Am I allowed to say that word? You can bleep it.
Yes, you're fine.
And I froze and I blanked on the rest of the song. And the ending of the song, ironically, is thank you. And just like I just skipped to the end. I just looked at the conductor and was like, thank you. And I walked off stage just crying. And there's Adam Lambert giving me the like slow clap going, bravo, Josh. Bravo. And I just freaked out. And it's funny. I think that's what started like our childhood like riff against each other. But then we ended up doing Wicked together years later. And like he's lovely.
He was a Fiero understudy, right?
Yes, we had called it She-Arrow when Adam went on. And I love Adam so much. And then Adam obviously did American Idol and is now Adam Lambert.
Yeah, with Queen.
Yeah, I'm so happy for him. He's a incredible human.
There's someone that we know that did was it she did Gypsy, or what show at Tuacahn? Oh no, it was some was it Gypsy? And they used a real lamb for a little lamb.
Yeah, but so did my production.
But Tuacahn contracts are like 5 months. So the little lamb grew. And by the end, it was like this giant lamb, and she's singing Little Lamb to like this full-grown lamb.
Yeah, bad idea.
Sheep, I guess it would be. A sheep, it would be at that point.
A little sheep. That's hilarious.
Animals on stage are not a good idea.
No.
Like, I love dogs, and I love shows with dogs, but the part of the problem is you never work with dogs and children because they pull focus because you don't know what they're going to do. So as an adult, you don't want to be on stage with animals or children because like when Bruiser comes on in Legally Blonde, you're like, what's the dog going to do? And then I feel like you just need to limit your time with the animals. Because there's, I mean, even the most trained animals could be unpredictable. Though those animals are trained within like an inch of their life.
Most of the time, the dogs that they used for Finding Neverland were not trained. They came from an animal sanctuary, and it was their first time on stage. Harvey Weinstein, the head producer of the show, didn't want to pay for the big Bill, whatever his name is, who does all
Bill Berloni?
Who does all the Broadway animals.
He gets rescue dogs, but he actually trains them.
Yeah. Well, this company, poor Diane, would be sitting in the house during tech with a god mic, and Bambi was the dog's trainer, and she'd be like, Bambi, can you get the dog to look at Matthew, who played the lead? And Bambi would come out on stage and be like, no, he's a dog. He's a dog. I can't do that. He's a dog. And then like she would have us like hold meat in our hands to get the dog to do things or like come with us, and like when your hand smells like beef
on the
for
prop table
weeks on end, and you're like, I'm going to die alone. People are like, you're so lucky you're on Broadway, and I'm like, yeah, and I smell like beef.
Hi ho, the glamorous. Like Broadway is not glamorous.
No, it's not.
I feel like people think it's super glamorous. It is a lot of work with meat spelling hands.
Yeah, and you're carrying meat in your pocket, beef. Hoping that a dog that's not trained will do what it's supposed to do.
I love the dogs in shows. When I was in London with my mom and sister, we went and saw Lady Day. It was actually Audra McDonald's last performance.
Oh, she's so good. And
we were at a pub across the street before the show, and the dog handler walked out with like 3 chihuahuas, and I was like, I'm gonna follow the dogs. My mom's like, what is wrong with you? I was like, I want to go see the dogs.
Yeah,
because that show was so fancy it had understudy dogs. That's when you know you have made it. And it's also funny because I haven't done a show with dogs, but Patrick has. And he's like, the dog has a better resume than me because they're so like specific. But the best thing to do is if you're an actor is to be a handler, because then they want the dog, they have to give you a contract as well. So like that's where the real money is.
Yeah, is
they pay more for the dog than for you. Kind of going back to what we were talking about, like with swings, you've also been the understudy in several shows. Can you kind of talk about exactly what that means and what the experience of being an understudy on Broadway is like?
Sure. When you're an understudy on Broadway, that experience means you're going to have a doctor who gives you a prescription for lorazepam so you can calm down often. You're going to have a restaurant in Midtown that knows what you drink. It's wonderful. It's also terrifying. At least the first few times that you go on. You also might not go on. You never know. Depends on who you're understudying. But it's tough because you're doing 8 shows a week, and then Thursday and Friday you're also at the theater rehearsing all day. But then when you go on, it's magical. The first time is always magical because everybody is supporting you. The third time, not so much. Everybody's used to it. Then they're like, this guy usually, sticks out his right hand and not his left. Can you do that, please? And it's like, oh, yeah, sure. Okay. But it's also exciting. When I understudied Brooks in the Prom, it was fun because I was a principal role in the show, but I was also the lead's understudy. And so it was tricky because sometimes on stage I would watch him when I'm still doing my job and doing the scene, but really I'm focusing on what he's doing because I can't watch the show. So this is my opportunity to learn. And then there was a moment where I was sitting backstage at intermission. I always sat in this quick change booth because the Long Acre Theater, there's nowhere to go. And I would read my book, in the middle of all these costumes. And the stage manager, Glenn, ran in and he was like, "You're on for Brooks at intermission." And I was like, "Shut up." And he went, No, you're on for Brooks. And literally I was like, okay, bring my costumes down here and bring my lorazepam. And they did. And I had to go on stage for the genius Brooks Ashmanskas at intermission. And when they announced it, you could hear the audience be like, oh, which is fine. I get it. And I think just to put their minds at ease, the first thing that I did when I went on stage, the character was Emma, who I was supposed to talk to. And I was like, Emma, it's me. I know I look different. And the audience was then on my side, and they erupted in applause, and it worked out. But yeah, being an understudy is fun, rewarding, and stressful.
I've never understudied, but I feel like it's so different from being a swing because, like you said, you can't watch. So
yeah,
stress. We've talked a little bit about this, like personally, and a little bit kind of on, in the interview, that social media has become such an important tool for actors. And this is not something that existed when either of us started performing. So what are some of the challenges of being a professional actor in such a social media forward world? Because I know there's some producers that want like a specific social media following in order to hire you, which is bananas to me.
Yeah.
Because you're not the producer. It's not your job to promote the show.
I think there's a little bit less of that now, which is good, because I think people have learned that just because you have a following, that doesn't mean that you're going to sell tickets.
Yeah.
Like there was this big surge in like, oh, we got to hire a TikTok star or something. And it's like, great. And the show flopped because a TikTok following, you're talking about like, they have a bunch of 13-year-old fans from all over the world. 13-year-olds don't have money to buy Broadway tickets, period.
Most people don't have money to buy Broadway tickets. Definitely not 13-year-olds.
Same. But I think for me in my journey, it's a little complicated because I really don't like social media. It makes me uncomfortable. I post when I have to. I also feel weird posting. I don't want people who aren't working to feel bad if I'm working.
That's a real thing, because sometimes when I'm depressed, I'll look on the kind of search for Instagram, and it just, because of the algorithms, will be like, all these people in Wicked, and I just will like, it's a real thing. I feel it when you're not working and you see people working, you're kind of like,
Yeah. Also, what you're seeing is the glamorous side. You're seeing, if it's like one of those stupid TikTok reels of like, this is my day for a 2-show day, and it's like everything looks so perfect, but really it's not.
No.
And
they're not showing how many auditions they didn't get to get this show.
Yeah, but also the people that post themselves like, here are my, self-tape bloopers. I'm just like, so you're bragging about all the jobs you're not getting online? Like, that's how it makes me feel. Social media just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I wish I wasn't sort of addicted to it.
It's a problem because, and it like, talking about mental health of actors in general, it's hard enough when, back in the day would find out through the grapevine someone got a role that you didn't. But now you're not only seeing that, but people you don't know, and you're comparing yourself to everybody, which is an actor's favorite pastime, and it's so hard. But it's become such an important part of performing, and I think just being a professional in general. It doesn't matter whether you're like a sex therapist or an actor. Like, you need to have some sort of following in order to do everything.
And advertising is important, and I use that. But the older I get, the less I post. Also, the less like personal stuff I sort of post. Oh, thank you, Patrick. He's bringing me water. But social media, it is important, but I think it's also important to know what you're posting and to be sensitive towards other people. And it's great to be like, hey, I'm doing this show. But you don't need to constantly, like, I think some people, that becomes their self-worth.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So speaking of self-worth, you're one of the few people who actually got a positive review from Ben Brantley, because he's kind of known for like pooping on anything, even good things that he doesn't like. How did that feel?
That was amazing. Are you kidding me? That was just like, I forget exactly what he said, but it was, I think it was for A New Brain at City Center.
Mm-hmm. Which I also saw.
Oh, it was one of the best experiences ever. And for like, to get that sort of validation at that time, I was working for Harvey Weinstein. You do not get that kind of validation from that man.
No.
And he wasn't even going to let me go do A New Brain. I basically quit Finding Neverland. I said, fine, here's my notice. And then they came back and were like, oh, okay, you can go do that, but then come back. But that was how I was being treated. And then all of a sudden Ben Brantley is liking me. Like, it's nuts. It's wild. I'll never get over it.
I love that you got a positive review from like the most harsh critic in probably there will never be a Ben Brantley theater. He's not beloved in the New York City theater community.
I didn't say that. That was Nicole that said that.
It's fine if I never work ever again as an actor, which I'm not even.
And it's all because of that.
Which I'm not even like actively pursuing right now. I owe money to Equity, so I couldn't even audition.
I think I owe money to Equity. I think everybody owes money to Equity.
It's like a $1,200, $1,400 initiation fee, and then they're like, "Give us this much money every so often." And it's like, guys, we're not working. There's 2% of the union working at one time. Like, calm down. So speaking of working, you've also done a lot of film and TV work. So for those of us listening, that are not actors, what's the difference really between film and theater auditions?
Oh, well.
I mean, it's changed also.
It's changed drastically. It used to be you would go into a casting office and do it with a casting director. They'd give you feedback. You do it a couple times, and that was the day. And what was awful about that, let's say you had 2 or 3 auditions that day. One of them is for like a CEO type, and the next one is for like a bohemian type. To walk around the city carrying like a 3-piece suit, a dirty scarf for the bohemian, whatever, and finding a place to change, it was a nightmare. Now it's all self-tapes, meaning that you have to do them at home. Which has its benefits and also is very lonely because you're not getting feedback. It feels sometimes like you're sending them out into the ether and not getting a response. But also there are bonuses. A lot more people. Auditions are much more accessible because of self-tapes for many groups of people, which is wonderful. But so that's really, I mean, also it's just more subtle. Theater has a theatricality to it where film, they don't want to watch you acting. They want to watch somebody being. Yeah. And that is a talent. And it is very difficult. And some people are very natural and terrific at it. And other people are not. I would say it is probably my favorite medium. I love working in film and TV. I think it's so much easier. The money is much better.
Yes.
The hours suck. But you're also like, I work a lot in comedy, and what's hard about doing a long-running show on Broadway, when you're trying to make the same joke land for the 500th time, that's hard. When you just film it for a day, like, you're done. You never have to worry about it again. And so I think that's sort of what I love about it.
They're different mediums. I've seen people who have won Academy Awards on stage, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
So I think, being they're like you said, they're so different. Do you find, because we talked a lot about some of the shows you did and haven't talked about, you've done more than we've talked about. Do you find there's a downside to being a more well-known performer within the Broadway community?
Well, that's interesting. I don't necessarily feel like well-known outside of, the theater community, I guess. But, there's positives and there's negatives. Sometimes it's like, oh, I feel on top of the world. I know I've inspired people, or I don't have to audition for this. I'm just being asked to be a part of it. And then there are other times when it's like, especially with the pandemic, which was just so brutal for everybody, but I think specifically for theater workers, where you're like, oh, I haven't worked in a while and I feel like I'm being forgotten, or I feel like people think that I'm failing, or, it's really just, it's easy to beat yourself up emotionally speaking. Or like, oh, I played principal roles. Now I'm doing ensemble again. And do people look down on me for that? And the sad thing is that, yeah, there are going to be some jerks who do treat you or talk about you differently. And there are going to be the majority of people are very kind and they get it. Like, a job is a job.
Yeah.
I was doing one of my first jobs out of the pandemic, theater-wise, was in the ensemble of Dear World at Encores. Mm-hmm. And this show fan, I forget his name, but he's a lovely old man. And I know he meant well, but he waited for me at the stage door before the show and was like, I just want you to know that this is beneath you. And I know that he meant well, but it really hurt my feelings. And I was like, it's beneath me to have a job. It's beneath me to what? Like, I'm lucky to be here. I'm lucky to be in this caliber of a show. Yes, I'm not doing much, but am I making a living? Am I able to pay my bills this month? Am I able to get insurance weeks after losing my insurance twice during the pandemic? So it is not beneath me, but like it really hurt to hear that. So I think that's sort of the downside is people just don't get it. They don't get how hard it is. They don't get that there is no direct path. There is no book that's going to teach you all. It is random. It is luck. It is talent meets opportunity meets, who knows what. Do they like you? Is your hair the right color? You just do not know.
It comes down to a lot of arbitrary things.
Yeah.
I think my story I talk about a lot is there was a director who didn't like the dress I wore the first time he saw me at an audition, and that was the end of that.
I hate that person.
Well, he's dead. So,
God hated them too.
You can cut this, Patrick.
No, leave it. Let the people know. God took Yom Kippur seriously that year. He was like, you are not. What did you say about that dress? No book of life for you.
It was a cute dress.
I bet it was.
It was turquoise. What advice would you have for someone who's interested in a career as a Broadway performer?
Oh, this answer has changed so many times over my life. I feel like people really want me to say, like, just go for it, shoot for the moon, and yes. But honestly, like in my 40s, the reality is there anything else that you want to do?
And this is something I hear often from a lot of people. If you can see yourself doing anything else, do that.
Do it. If you're doing this for a living, there has to be an insane drive within you where this is the only option, period. Because otherwise it just is not worth it. You go through so much rejection, so much pain. You are so poor all the time. And even when you're working, like, yes, people go, wow, you're on Broadway, you're making this much money. And it's like, for 6 months. So what I'm doing in that 6 months is saving money to make the rest of my life a little less miserable, So that's what I mean. If you can still do theater if you're not a professional. You can still perform everywhere. There are so many performance opportunities. You don't have to make this your life. If you want it, if it's just there are no other options, and I relate to that because that's how I was. Take as many classes as you can. As many classes as you can. Find your community, because we are often told that these people are our competition, but no, we are only at competition with ourselves, because us getting the job is not in our control. What's in our control is showing up prepared, passionate, and present. Everything else is not in our control, so that is your success. But honestly, take as many classes as you can, meet as many casting people as you can. You're going to spend a lot of money on these classes.
It's so expensive.
It's so expensive. But if this is truly your journey, really just take as many classes as you can, be open, be strong, find your community, and really practice self-love. And also, like, even for us big girls, like, you know, move your body, get work out and stuff, because you can be big on Broadway, but it's not easy.
It's physically demanding.
Very physical. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your current project and how you got involved with that?
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Me too. It's one of my favorite movies come to screen, Death Becomes Her, the musical. And it's starring my loved ones, Jen Samard, Megan Hilty, and Christopher Christopher Sieber. I almost said Fitzgerald. Sorry.
Different Christopher.
Yeah, and it was funny. I got an offer for the first reading, and initially I was like, I don't want to do ensemble. I think I'm going to say no. But then I looked at the team again, and I was like, actually, I'm obsessed with this film. Like, yeah, I want to do this, and I did it, and that led to a much bigger version of the reading where like you had a band, you had the fancy mics. It was huge. And it was also so cool because it was so hush hush. And everybody that I knew in the industry was trying to get in to see these presentations. And the fact that like my agents couldn't even get in was like, this is cool. And then I had to audition to go further with it, which meant going to dance calls. And at the time, I was working on development for the La La Land musical and trying to get them being like, hi, I know that we have 29 hours to do this, but I need to go away for 5 hours to go dance and sing. Oh, and now they want me to come back tomorrow. Is that okay? And hoping that it worked out. And I wanted it so badly. And I was very lucky, and I got it. And then the workshop was a dream come true. I love this cast. I love the creative team, but it was also hard. There's dancing, and there were moments of dancing that were out of my, out of my level of expertise. And I literally went to the associate choreographer and I was like, hey, this dance move, I can't do. I'm trying and I will get better at it, but I just want you to know. And they were very like, thank you for saying that. We appreciate that. But then after that, there was the wait to see who was going with it to Chicago. And not everybody got accepted. And we waited for a long time. I want to say we waited for like 2-3 weeks. And that was, they held another round of auditions and saw everybody in New York. And so there's that feeling of like, it is us, but now they're searching under every rock, every stone, scraping the bottom of every barrel just to make sure that it really is us before they spend the money on it. And but it's a dream come true. The show is fantastic. It's so funny. Plus, like Megan Hilty and Jennifer Samard on stage together, it's just two geniuses on stage. Like you can't do better than that. It's really amazing. Okay.
So I want to know about a crazy audition story. We all have a crazy audition story, like a terrible audition or a crazy good audition. Like mine is they were doing a production of 42nd Street out near in LA where my parents lived. And I'm not a tap dancer, but the director, John Engstrom, who was in the original cast of 42nd Street, was my tap teacher. So he knew me. And I was like, I just have to get through this tap combo and I'll be fine. And I did good on the tap combo. And then they had everybody coming to sing. And I was so excited that I got through the tap combo. I blew the singing part, which is not my thing. And I didn't get it. But I ended up getting that fiddler I talked about.
Okay.
So it worked out fine. But I love people's like crazy audition stories because everyone has one.
Sure. I mean, yes, there have been crazy stories. I guess one of them for me, or one of two, was the first one is Disney was trying to see if they could put The Jungle Book and make that into a big show.
They would have had to do like a Lion King thing.
Who knows? But they were doing it in Chicago, and I went in for King Louis, the like, like you, but it was very strange. I think Mary Zimmerman was directing. It was very abstract. And they had us like reading all these weird poems from the book or whatever. And I'm waiting to go in, and the casting director comes out and she goes, hey, are you ready to go? And I was just like, yeah, sure. And she was like, okay, walk in like a monkey. This is Josh Lamon, everybody. And I was just like,
what?
Okay. And though you can't see me, listening audience at home, I just awkwardly like walked in like what I thought a monkey would with an embarrassed look on my face. Another similar thing was I went in for Honeymoon in Vegas and to replace somebody, And
it ran long enough that they had a race once?
Oh, no. This was from their out of town at Paper Mill.
Okay. I was like, it didn't run long enough for them to
they had a very
replace
short
people.
run, sadly.
To be fair, there was a song about skin cancer.
Was there? I don't remember that.
Because the whole premise is that...
oh, right.
Yes,
I remember that.
That the leading lady looks like his wife who died, and he sings a song about how he should have gotten her out of the sun.
Yeah, right.
So there's a song about skin cancer. So
as there is in every great musical.
Of course.
But I was going in to play like Tony Danza's sidekick or something. Mm-hmm. And it was high stakes. They were looking for somebody immediately. There were like 50 people in the room watching you, and casting comes out, and they're like, "Hey, are you ready to come in?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I think so." And he's great. You're reading with Tony Danza. This is Josh Lamon, everybody, and Tony Danza is like, "Hey," he's this wild energy that I wasn't prepared for. Nobody told me that I was going to be reading with Tony Danza, and I absolutely failed. And then they had me do the song, and he was behind everybody in the room, like making wild gestures at me, like trying to like make me, I don't know, hype me up or something. And it was so distracting. And I just failed, and I just wanted to ask for my resume back.
Those are expensive,
headshots
man.
Are expensive,
headshots
girl.
are expensive, and actors are poor.
I know.
It's like $100 for like 25 of them, or something obscene.
Yeah. But those were sort of like the crazy auditions of just like being put in an awkward situation all of a sudden. Or
I had something similar happen to me. They were doing a production of Robber Bridegroom in LA, and they were like, pretend you're a bird. And I'm like, what the fuck?
No, you pretend you're a bird.
You pretend you're a bird.
Jerk.
And I've heard of directors as well who will ask for weird things in the room just to see if you do them or will listen to them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a mind play game that I don't think is necessary.
It is, and I agree. For the Who's Tommy revival that's coming in, I was auditioning for Uncle Ernie a bunch. And the director, Des, who I think is brilliant, I've never worked with him before, he was like, now at the end of the song, what happens is he's so disgusted with himself that he runs outside and he throws up, and then he takes a giant chug of, out of his flask and all this stuff. And so I finished the song. And for those of you who don't know the Who's Tommy, Uncle Ernie does something terrible to Tommy. And so I finished the song, and there's silence in the room. And so I was like, oh, I better
go
do
throw
what he
up.
wants. And so I pretended to like go throw up and then drink heavily. And like I did this like, I don't know, like 3-minute like silent scene with myself as they watched. And then more silence. And he goes, in my entire career, nobody's ever, done what I've told them would happen after. So thank you for showing us what that would look like. And I was like, oh, so I wasn't supposed to? You were all just being silent?
That's so weird.
Yeah, so strange. Auditioning itself is so weird.
It's such an unnatural thing.
It's awful.
And there's these weird rules that you're just supposed to know.
Yeah.
It's just not natural.
No.
It's not a natural
thing. It's bizarre.
And I feel like I'm such an over-preparer that if I don't over-prepare, that I get in my head, and then they ask you to do other stuff, and I'm like, but I didn't prepare for this.
I'm the same way, though. I'm like, okay, I'm going to rehearse it as if the reader is on the right side of the room, now on the left side of the room. Now they're up with me. Now I'm looking at them like, I do everything that I can.
We talked a little bit about rejection and kind of the difficulty of that. Do you have any advice for someone who's facing a lot of rejection but is not quite at that point where they're? And I love these stories the story that you told. I feel like I hear a lot of people who are like, I'm gonna quit, and then they end up getting their role. But a lot of people, myself, I struggle with this. I think a lot of actors do. What would be your advice to somebody about how to deal with rejection?
Be so kind to yourself, because honestly, like, it really has nothing to do with you. If they want you, they want you. If they want somebody else, they want somebody else. It's not personal. It's just, maybe it's a look. Maybe it's they know them. Maybe, who knows? So like I said earlier, what I do a lot of audition coaching, and what I tell people, your job is to give them a fierce option. That is all your job is to present yourself as a fierce option. If you do that, if you go and you're prepared, you're passionate, you're present, you are being 1,000% successful. You are a successful actor here in the city, because the results do not equal your success, period.
And I feel like also part of I've been told your job as an actor is not to book shows, it's to get callbacks.
It's to let casting know that every time they bring you in, you are going to give them the fierce option that is you.
Because casting directors also, those of you not familiar with kind of how it works, is usually you don't get to the actual creative team until you've been, okayed by the casting directors. So when they okay you, they are also risking their reputation and trying to bring the best option so that they continue to get jobs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's just so much. And I love that you're talking about how it's not you, because I feel like, we also have to take into account a lot of times things are precast and they're just auditioning because the union requires it. There's just so many variables, but it's hard. It's really hard to be kind to yourself.
Yeah. So it's practicing being kind to yourself and giving yourself kudos, and also being open with people, talking to your friends, to your community, to your partner, and, if you don't have that, finding a community online or something, letting people know where you are emotionally and taking care of yourself. And maybe that means I'm going to take myself to a movie today. Or like one of my rewards is, I don't love fast food, but McDonald's has the best Diet Coke in the world. They have their own formula. And sometimes if I'm feeling like low after an audition, I'm like, I'm going to get myself a McDonald's Diet Coke. And that is my treat. And that is some self-care in that moment.
I've also heard about like letting it go. And this is something I'm really bad about, because I start to like fantasize about doing a show and I kind of get all on board with it.
Yeah.
And then I can't let it go.
Yeah, you have to let it go. You have to find ways to, like what I do, the sides, as soon as I'm out of the audition, I throw them away. If I have to reprint them, I'll do it, but I'm not going to count on it. That energy is not coming with me anymore. It is done. Goodbye. And onwards and upwards. Because, what I've learned is when I first came into this industry, I was a little obsessed with it. All of my self-worth was wrapped into when I was working. And it was like that for about 20 years until the pandemic hit, when all of a sudden all of that was gone and I was alone in my apartment feeling worthless. So that there's so much more to life than our success at our careers, whether it's performing, whether it's, underwater basket weaving or being a lawyer. What matters are the people in our lives. And, I'm very, very lucky to have an incredible boyfriend that I love with all my heart. And even when I'm having those bad career days, I'm like, but you know what? I'm not sharing my life with a production of Rent or whatever. Like this is who matters to me.
And that's one thing I think also about I'm getting closer to the mic because Patrick yells at me about this. I think that's also something that a lot of people don't realize is you talked a little bit about being sad when a contract ends. When a show ends, there's a deep depression and it's kind of a part of your life that's now over and it's not going to keep you warm at night. So, it's nice to book shows. It's nice to be doing them. But at the end of the day, they always end. So you need those relationships.
Yeah.
Is there a show or shows you've auditioned for that you feel like you nailed it and you still kind of like, that's the one that got away? Because they'll do those things in 54 Below. It's like parts I didn't get.
Yeah.
And people kind of, I think, still kind of hold on to some of these auditions.
8 million of them. I'm also a psychopath in the sense that like sometimes at these auditions, I'm like, well, who else are they going to cast? This is me. This is just me. Like and I get into this weird mindset of like, well, if they don't cast me, they're idiots. And like there was this job that I was up for where I really felt as like, this is me. There is nobody else who can do this. And then they cast, thinking about the bigger guy community, and then they cast this, Asian twink. And I was like, oh, that wasn't me at all.
No.
But yeah, you get married to the idea of things, but you just have to learn to let go. And there are so many roles that I wish came my way, or that I was convinced were going to. I remember auditioning to replace for one of the managers in Phantom of the Opera, which I've been a Phantom fan for, since I was a kid. And going into the audition, I was so cocky. I was like, who else? This is me. And I went in, and then my friend Bradley Dean, who got it, was in, I think, right before me. And hearing him sing, like, he has an opera voice, I was like, oh, shit, it's not me, it's him. And sure enough, he got it, But there's always going to be the ones that get away.
Do you go in long run? Because I'm always curious about this, because I used to coach with Ann Nathan, and she said something like she was up for Madame Morrible, and the person who got it, like, knew Joe
Mantel, yeah.
Like from childhood. And I was like, well, why wouldn't they go back and like cast you after she left if you're the second choice? Like, why is that something that doesn't happen? Like, if you don't get it, you don't get it. I know I've heard stories about people being brought back, but like...
Sometimes, who knows? Who knows? I think Anne is a genius. I love her, and I'm shocked that she hasn't been Morrible.
I know, right?
Brought it up. But you just never know. Or like, there have been shows where I was like for me, Chicago, Amos in Chicago, I was up for it a bunch, and then I was told, well, Walter Bobby just didn't really respond to you at the end of the day, where it's like, that's fair enough. Mm-hmm. But I haven't been called back in since for it. And that was like 10 years ago. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, I think I'm a little bit more appropriate for it now. But maybe that ship has sailed. I don't know.
It's so interesting that the casting process is bananas.
Things make very little sense. But, also we just have to trust the journey and also be smart enough to know that, like, this is not the end-all be-all. And no show is going to make or break you. And, like, if there's ever a time in your life when you're like, you know what, I want to consider something else, do it. Live your life. There's no shame in it.
And you can come back to it. I remember I was doing a class with Patrick Page, and some of the other people in the class, we were talking about, like, being parents and that, that happening. And someone said, theater's always going to be there. Like, theater's the kind of thing that if you take a bit of a break, they're not going to be like, well, where the hell were you for 10 years?
Yeah.
Like, I've had people even ask me, kind of my journey and things like that. So I think it's something you can always come back to if you want to.
Yeah, perfect example. Courtney Collins, who played one of the principals in The Prom, she went to Juilliard. Her roommate was Laura Linney, and they graduated and all that stuff. And then she said, you know what? I want to move back to Georgia, and I want to get married and have a family. And she did. And then years later, Prom goes to Atlanta for the Out of Town. She auditions as a local performer, gets cast as one of the principals. And then next thing you know, and, by now her kids are mostly grown up, she's making her Broadway debut at 50. You just never know. So, there's no rhyme or reason to anything. And anything is possible at any time.
I think that's good advice. Angela Lansbury was the guest speaker at my graduation, and her advice was expect the unexpected, because you never know kind of where you're going to end up.
Yeah. I'd say that is the hardest thing about show business. This is going to sound dark, and maybe it is, but it's sort of similar to like being addicted to a drug. You're chasing a high constantly. And you could be so low, and then all of a sudden Nickelodeon calls and they want to see you for a cartoon. And then you're like on top of the world again. And then low. It's just, there are so many highs and lows to this.
I think that a lot of actors also deal with mental health issues.
Yes, me too.
Well, you have to be crazy to want to do this a little bit, because it's so unpredictable. But yeah, it is very much like a drug, because being on stage is a high, and then when when a show ends, it's like that deep depression, and I love that kind of comparison.
Yeah.
I want to jump back to something you mentioned earlier about going to Israel for your bar mitzvah. I want to talk about because again, we're going to be 2 episoding this. So I want to talk about what that experience was like and if you've been back since and if you'd want to go back.
Oh, I'd love
Maybe not
to go
today.
back.
Maybe not today.
Maybe not at this moment. But I would love to go back. It was very special, also very unique being that young. And I was never very spiritual, especially back then. And all of a sudden you're there and it's just, I remember experiencing emotions that I still can't describe where like you're not spiritual, but then all of a sudden you just are. You just feel a presence that you can't fully comprehend. Even as a Jew, like I remember the 12 Stations of Christ, I think it's called, where you're walking his final journey or whatever.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
I remember watching other people that were clearly Christian or Catholic or whatever, like really going through something and how much it moved me and being like, no matter what religion you are, what you believe even, it all happened here. There's something, I mean, like, even if you, the closest thing that I could imagine is if people have gone to Rome, you know, when you're there and you're like, oh, wow, like
I
this
had
is
that
old.
feeling when I was in the Colosseum. I was like, first of all, it's way smaller than you think it's going to be.
Way smaller.
But then, you know, I remember we took like a private tour of the Colosseum and Palatine Hill, and the guide was like, in the year 80, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, in the year 80, it's bonkers, and then you're there.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, we were also like in a car, and they're like, that's where Caesar was killed, and I'm like, what?
Isn't it bonkers?
Yeah, it's crazy to be in these places that are just so old and millions upon millions of people have walked where you've walked.
Yeah, it's where everything started. It's where our religion started. It's the cause of great celebration, great grief, great everything. I would love to go back. We were also lucky. We did a tour of the entire country. We got to stay in kibbutzes and nice hotels. It was also a scary time. It was when a lot of, the bombings were happening, like suicide bombings and stuff. And I remember we took a bus once and being terrified, being like, I don't want to be on this bus.
Yeah.
But it was just so magnificent. And I wish, and I know I appreciated it back then, but I wish I could go now so I could really appreciate it as an adult rather than as a teenager.
You know, that's something that's so funny. I feel that way about some roles that I've had too, that I feel like, oh, I bring something so different to this now that I've had life experience.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing with Israel. Did you read at the Wailing Wall? Because I know people will go and they'll have their bar mitzvah there.
We had ours, I might be wrong. I want to say it was on Mount Sinai.
Okay.
But we did go to the Wailing Wall. I know I put prayers on there, probably about being on Broadway or something.
Well, it worked.
It worked, girl? Yeah, it worked. Just go to the Wailing Wall. Get your wish.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
I haven't gone to the Wailing Wall.
What's
That's why
your dream?
I've not been on Broadway.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
welcome to the Wailing Wall. What's your dream?
yeah, just like the opening of Pretty Woman, except it's in Jerusalem. What's your dream?
Very different movie.
Pretty Balabusta.
Yes, very different movie.
Yeah, so I think that answered the question. I don't know.
Yeah.
One of my favorite experiences was Into the Woods in Central Park with Shakespeare in the Park. Yeah. It was epic, and it was really strange, too. I auditioned for the role of the steward, and the director, Timothy Sheeter from London, just, I think, was fascinated with me. I was so strange and weird. I was wearing this silver brooch with cats on it, and he was like, can you come closer? And what are you wearing? And I was like, it's a brooch. And he was like, and then it was the weekend. I asked my agents if they got feedback. My agents were like, I don't think this is going your way. Sorry. And I sat Shiva for the job over the weekend. And then Monday I had an offer. But there's something magical. Granted, that production, it had like a 4-story set. The stage was mulch. We were in Central Park. When it rained, you were being rained on, and then you were performing in mud, and doing Sondheim, which is not easy.
For those of you that are not familiar, Sondheim is like the Shakespeare of musical theater. It is the highest echelon.
The highest. And it's complicated. And also, like, you would have raccoons fighting on stage while you're doing a scene.
Okay, they are rebuilding the Delacorte, but I have heard that raccoons will take up residence in the Delacorte, and it's like a big problem.
Yeah, during the song Agony one night, 2 raccoons got into a fight on the stage. A fight. So I always called it like, like Into the Woods was like Broadway Survivor. It was really intense, and also it would be miserable. You're performing in a rainstorm. It's 80 plus degrees. You're dehydrated. You're like, now I have to run up 4 flights of stairs and sing, but then you're sitting in the wings and Sondheim is standing next to you crying and you're happy tears and you're watching Donna Murphy, my goddess, my friend, my love. Nobody does it better. Belting out the song The Last Midnight while there's a full moon behind her. Wind is going crazy and there's rain and a storm and she's the witch. And I mean, when does that happen? That is magical. That is theater like you will never experience. And those people that did, they will never see anything like it again. That to me is like some of my favorite moments in my career and in just seeing theater. Also just like the memories of standing next to Stevie Sondheim while he's like crying watching his show. Like, and I don't want to make people think that I was close to Steven because I wasn't. We just did that show together, and to prove that point, years later I did a theater was honoring him, and I was asked to perform and sing Not While I'm Around, and I did it. And then after the show, I was like, Steve, hi, Josh, we did Into the Woods together. And he was much older at this point and just looked at me, and he was so tired, and he was like, if you say so. Like highs and lows, folks. Highs and lows.
It can be glamorous and then not glamorous. Have you done like Jewish shows like Fiddler? I know you just did the Jerusalem Syndrome.
Jerusalem Syndrome.
I wasn't able to see, but
no. In high school, I was Tevye in Fiddler my sophomore year, and I was wonderful.
You brought all that life experience as a 15-year-old to Tevye.
Exactly. As a closeted Tevye. Oddly enough, it's a dream of mine to be in Fiddler, and nobody will see me for it, which, I mean, is fine. But, I can't, I don't think I've ever played anybody that was necessarily Jewish. Yeah, but I would love to. I would love that.
All right. So these last questions are kind of short form questions done like the Actor Studio. So you can pretend I'm James Lipton and you're on the show.
Okay.
So what is your favorite Yiddish word?
It's for like a woman that's like an incredible like baba. Oh gosh. Oh. I know this. Why is it? A balabusta.
A balabusta.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with
word.
that. What does that mean?
It's like unical. Like you came here, your home's beautiful, you're a great hostess. I got beautiful mug of nice cold water. You're a balabusta. And then the other ones, like obviously like schmuck and schlep and like all that kind of stuff. What I love about Yiddish is it reminds me of Italian. Like it's so much like, it's so performative. Mm-hmm. Like it's like dancing when you're saying it. Like I had to schlep over here, even not knowing what that means. You know what that means.
Yeah, I love Yiddish for the same reason.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
I don't know. Maybe Purim. I love to dress up. Yom Kippur always scared the daylights out of me when I was a kid. I like hearing the rabbi be like, some by fire, some by water. Being like, oh my God, this is a horror film. Please don't kill me.
You know, you should, speaking of Israel, you should go to Tel Aviv for Purim. I hear it's like a big dance party, but there's also like a big gay scene in Tel Aviv.
Well, what's rad about my mom, I was obsessed with Punky Brewster when I was a kid.
Yes.
And
millennials.
Yeah, and I went as Punky Brewster to our Temple Purim Carnival at like maybe second grade. And my mom was like looking back as being like, oh, that was like the early 80s. And for my mom to be that like, yeah, you can go as Punky Brewster. I don't care. And nobody made a big deal out of it. I was just Punky Brewster. I didn't want to be King Ahasuerus.
Did you get like a wig with like the pigtails?
I think, no, I had like long enough hair that my sister made pink pigtails and we sprayed it black, you know.
If you were to have a bar mitzvah today, what would the theme of your party be?
Something ridiculous. It would be something so absurd. It wouldn't be Broadway. I don't know, maybe like a Schitt's Creek kind of thing, or like even folks at more like a Night of 1,000 Moiras. You know, it would be so out of control and absurd and campy and ridiculous. Yeah.
What profession other than your own would you want to attempt?
I love the idea of being a therapist. I also really love teaching. I've been teaching a lot, and it fills me up in a way that theater did when I was 18 and just starting out. I love that. And if I had like a random dream job, I'd want to work in probably criminal psychology or forensics. I'm a little true crime obsessed. And I would love to work in that. I love the idea of it. I don't know the reality of it. You know, but like solving crimes and locking up bad guys.
If heaven is real and God is there to welcome you, what would you like to hear them say?
Hey, Queen! I don't know. I would like a hug. I would like to see my childhood dog and all my loved ones who have gone before me.
Is there anything else you want to talk about or plug? Or I know we talked about not wanting to do self-promotion, but...
The only other thing, I guess that I do is I'm a member of this really fun musical improv team.
Yeah, I saw you posting about this.
Yeah.
Talk about what that is.
It's called Schitt's Probe. And basically in theater, there's something called a Sits Probe where
Yes.
It's
not about you. It's not about the actors.
Nope. It's the performers and the orchestra rehearse together for the first time. And it's a really magical experience. So we're called Schitt's Probe, and it's some of New York's best improvisers. And we take a Broadway or TV icon that doesn't necessarily do improv, and we make them the star of an improvised musical. Everything is improvised, lyrics, dances, dialogue. We have a band that are also improvising as we go along. And it's so much fun. So, I'm obviously taking a break during Death Becomes Her, but it performs twice a month in New York at the Asylum, and it's definitely worth checking out if you're in the city. And I guess, you know, I do want to emphasize that though it may seem like when we're talking about show business and the experience of it, that it is negative, it is also quite joyful. And there is a lot of love here. It is very difficult. But it is also very rewarding and very beautiful. And so if you're somebody who loves art in any shape or form, I thank you and continue loving art, continue sharing art. And also, like, if you love theater or want to be a part of it, but don't want to go for it professionally, I just want you to know that that is so okay. That is wonderful. There are so many ways, like, to be an artist. And no matter what you do in your life, nobody can take away that you are an artist. Period. Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining me, Josh. This is Nicole Kelly, and this has been She Brew in the City. So I hope you enjoyed the second half of that episode. So I have a small request from all of you. I know you're listening out there, but I don't know who you are. Please follow me on Instagram, send me a DM, comment on my photos, follow me on my baby TikTok account, which has less than 100 followers, and be sure to subscribe to my Patreon. We have some merch coming. I also am going to be participating in a giveaway the week before Hanukkah with some of my past and future guests. So be sure to follow me on Instagram and keep a lookout for that.